We are back once again, people. How are we doing? Welcome to everyone in the chat. Looks like we've got a few heads in already. Back again for another episode of the End Product. It is episode 44, and he's got myself today. We are without our top striker, our top scorer, Tony Watt, is without us. he's in training this morning. So I do have, as always, my sparring partner, Quinny. How you doing, Quinny?
Good, man. Good to see you. And it's we're getting a Friday morning shift. Bit of a whirlwind start to the day, isn't it? But yeah, good to get going. Stishy boy, good to see you.
Yeah, likewise, mate. I've got a mad one this morning. I'm off to Antwerp tonight and back again tomorrow. So I'm packing. I've had a busy week trying to sort of like squash everything in. Got up early this morning, getting all the lineups done this morning. So been on the laptop, through the week doing bits and bobs, sort of putting people where. And I think in the morning of, you really start. I don't know about you, but the sort of like the percentages, the likelihoods of players playing start to weigh a bit heavier on me. So like some of my choices changed. A few of my like usual big hitters are not likely to be playing, and you've got that rotation potential and bit of a pain. But yeah, I'm quite confident now that I've got the teams about as good as they're going to be before the weekend. What about yourself? How's your building been going for this one?
It's been not too bad. As I've said to you before we came on, I was listening to the Andrews actually talking about when they build their teams, and I build teams on Tuesday. Like as soon as the thing opens, I'm having a quick peek at the prize pool and just seeing kind of roughly where the big players will go. I don't build everything, but I'll build the ones that are easy to pick. Like, those guys have got great fixtures, and what kind of division would they maybe formulate into, And then I'll probably revisit it like once a day in some fashion, if I hear news about somebody, or maybe a game happens, because sometimes you're waiting for guys to actually play some football. So I've kind of went through that normal kind of rigmarole process, and I deleted them all last night, basically for the repurpose of building them the exact same way again. So yeah. I think that's probably a good sign that I've done my diligence. I've been really unfortunate the last couple of game weeks just with random either rubbish performances, or this midweek DNP on Taylor and Tierney totally wiped me out. I had no defenders running basically in any division. It was a nightmare. So yeah, I'm quite hopeful and quite confident. No Celtic again. They've got a cup game this week against Hearts, who we just played midweek, obviously, like I mentioned there. So I've only got I've got 8 teams with real cards listed, and I think maybe 3 of them I'm excited about, maybe 4. 2 are quite punty. One's a no-hoper, and then one's the Road to Glory team, which is limited.
Got you. Yeah. Do you know what I was going to ask you actually, because you just reminded me that obviously the midweek was a bit of a nothing week for me, because I had Clark was my only goalkeeper, and I was expecting as he did go ahead and concede the 3 goals plus, and as soon as you've got a goalkeeper, your only goalkeeper is likely to concede 3 or more. You just start. Yeah, my hopes of the game week kind of were dampened. But looking at some of the scores, I could have definitely had a win if I'd have put the cards in the right team. So I had I think my main team had Clark in goal, and then I had Koulibaly, Tamori, who both put up good scores, and then I managed to get a good score out of Wirtz as well. But then my forward card, I think I lined up Moreno for Villarreal, who was benched, and but the other sort of forward options I had was Chiesa, who was also benched, and Anthony at Man United. And I thought Anthony I did think he might play, but he ended up scoring quite well. And if I'd have put him in the team instead of Moreno, I probably would have scraped maybe a tier 3, or with the new tiers, maybe that would have been a tier 2. I don't know. Have you taken much notice of those new tiers and the sort of restructuring of that? Has that played into any of your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I was top of Kickoff Unique midweek. I'm now 3rd. I'm unfortunately 16 points off the top. Blaise Mendes was on the bench from the beginning, and if he started, that's plus 10 points, and then he would have only needed 7 points to get me top from there. So bit of a kick in the stones. But I was on for a tier 5 unique, right? And I must have had one of the funniest responses I've ever had to a message. It was from Hendo in the group chat. So I put the little screenshot, I'm top of Kickoff. tier 5 unique, and he was his instant response was, "What the fuck is that? Basketball?" Which I found hilarious. But I was going through that pool, like, but I was like, "What is a tier 5? What is it, man?" Since I'm looking to get like the best tier 5 ever, probably, since it's a unique, you know. And I went through the pool, like, and the first time I went through it must have been on the Tuesday night or something. There was a couple of cards in there that were like, okay, like I would definitely take that. Like that wouldn't be too bad at all for what they're calling a tier 5. And then you see like lots of anonymous people you've never heard of before. You've never seen their picture, you know, like, and there's a bunch of them as well. It's a really deep pool. But then I checked it last night, made a wee video, just like, oh, I might win, you know. And I looked at and it'd been changed, and there was like, I don't know, like there was definitely an update made to it. I don't know if it was maybe something like, because the pool was mad deep. So I don't know if it was a case of they maybe hadn't factored in like rotations or something. Maybe if a card had been given out as a reward, or maybe if an auction's been booked or something, because it's unique, so it's one of one, so it's maybe a little bit different in that sense. But I did feel that, like, cool, if you know tier 5 is all that, then hey, if you're winning one, you're just crossing your fingers like you do with any other tier, and you're not getting that as a tier 3 and being wildly upset, you know. I think one of the things people have definitely overlooked is the whole tier 2 to 4 region, because they always look rubbish anyway, right? But tier 2 is really now a tier 1 as we knew it, because what they've just basically done is taken the star pool and halved it. And they've got star and tier 1.
Just so they can be a bit more precise with those top end scores, I think, because I think like a lot of the fallout they had was with those people who were winning a star. And it's like, that's a star. And it is gutting when you are in for a star and you kind of win something that you feel is probably more like a tier 2. Like it might, some of the star pool for a while, wasn't it? Was like a goalkeeper from like the bottom half team of the Eredivisie, but they just played every game. And it's like, that doesn't feel like a star. And I think this at least makes you think, if you're winning a star now, you should really be winning someone that like is like someone you recognize straight away. You know, if you follow the top 5 leagues,
world-class player.
Yeah, like a top prospect, or someone, you know, someone that's worth a bit on the market basically as well. Like someone that people are like trying to get hold of right now. But yeah, that's what I took from it as well. I think at the bottom end, it doesn't change things quite as much. It's more like that star and tier 1 should be a little bit more refined, and hopefully, yeah, if you're winning those stars and tier 1s, we'll get less sort of complaints. Maybe the sentiment will be better about them, and then I guess that will kind of like start to trickle down in those tier 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I guess like another thing is that I think tier 5s might potentially open up that, you know, like the DMP pool a little bit more. Whether or not that's an issue. For so
there's like good tier 5s they can issue out to some ones you'd be happier when if you finish like in the last spot of a place and you get random DNP rookie kid.
Exactly.
Cool, I'll take that and put it in a backup third choice, fourth choice goalkeeper.
Yeah,
sure, just throw that in the pile and wait for that to happen.
That was one thing I used to like about U23 was if you did scrape a tier 3, there was always that little glimmer of hope that it's all right if it's a tier 3 that maybe is like a kid that just hasn't quite entered the first team just yet, but you know of them, maybe the scouts are talking about them, etc. But with the current sort of structure that's set in, it means that those cards don't even hit the pools at the minute, because you can't really win a card unless they've played the last 5 games, blah, blah, blah. And like with a lot of those U23 prospects, they just won't be in the pools because of those kind of boundaries that are set at the moment. But it used to be the case that a tier 3 could be reasonably exciting. I'm pretty sure I pulled a couple of tier 3s early in my time playing the game that I've probably still got now, but they were just like those people that they'll come good eventually. I know who this kid is, but you know, in a couple of cases, I probably still got their cards that still not quite come good. But I guess if you've got patience, that's the thing, isn't it? Some people will get a reward, and if they can't use it next weekend, it's disappointing straight away.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think like I won Panzo recently, didn't I? When I won him, I was quite happy about that, but I haven't been able to use him yet because he's still been injured. Like at the time, I probably could have swapped that reward with the current sort of rule sets, but we've had some kind of like pretty poor comms on like when he's coming back. I still don't really know when I'm going to be able to use him, but excited to be able to use him when I can. Like I think that's the difference. Some people don't mind winning a card like that. Some people do. But yeah, I think I did manage to scrape the 240 cap limited ETH this week.
Nice.
In the midweek, and
So I've been really
bad at. I've been really bad at cap, like the sort of threshold modes for the last couple of weeks. I don't think I've won any thresholds. So this weekend, I took a little bit of a proper hit at cap 240 for super rare, just because I think my options in U23 have not been quite banging enough, and I think that like this weekend some of the fixtures don't go quite right for me. So like it was either going to be like All-Star or cap 240, and I'm quietly confident that I should be close to it if all my players start. I'd like to think, but I think in cap 240 for me the biggest problem is, and it probably is for most people, is the super rare goalkeeper you use, because unless you're lucky and you've got like one of those heavy hitter, decent, dependable super rare goalkeepers who keep a lot of clean sheets, I'm normally putting in a goalkeeper there who is like either going to concede 3 or keep a clean sheet. And it's like, at the moment, that for me is Carlos Acevedo, who has had a really up and down start at Santos. And he goes in my cap 240 most weeks. And I think every week I've put him in there, he hasn't kept a clean sheet. And, you know, that's normally been the difference for me. I might be like 20 or 30 points off hitting that 250. And it normally, yeah, like a goalkeeper clean sheet would normally do that for me. A lot of the other players I put in have got decent all around. But the goalkeeper conceding the third goal can just kill off those cap modes massively, I think. So just trying to kind of, I've trying to gone in a little bit more this weekend, looking at the goalkeepers as like my main kind of starting point for the cap modes is like, do I have a goalkeeper that can keep a clean sheet? And if I am going to target that, I sometimes, you know, the goalkeeper will go in a little bit overpriced into that kind of cap 240, where you might want a goalkeeper who's maybe got like an L15 of 40 to 50. Sometimes now I think I might be a little bit more tempted to put in those goalkeepers that are like over 50 L15, just because I think that clean sheet, like we were saying on here, I think it was last week, you mentioned, is like if you can get a couple of decisives, you can pretty much guarantee you'll bank that. And the goalkeeper is like, you know, a clean sheet is like probably the most, what's the word? Like in terms of predicting, I think a goalkeeper clean sheet is more easy to predict than a goal scored by a player or an assist. I don't know. Sure. How do you feel about that?
Depends on the player, I suppose. Like, but yeah, no, I can get that for sure. Like at home, strong defense versus a weak attack. Like you can line those games up, that you can see them coming sometimes. And the goalkeeper, I think, yeah, I'm kind of with you in the sense that like, the goalkeeper doesn't really need to always do much to earn a clean sheet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They'll play 90 minutes. You know, it's just a case of the defense, the team, the tactics maybe going. Obviously, they need to make saves in that. But like you say, a striker needs to get on the end of something, needs to have chances given to them, you know, needs to take the penalty. So, yeah, I can get that actually.
The goalkeepers are a little bit easier to like figure out who's going to start as well. Like, whereas the strikers can sometimes be rotated midweeks into the weekends, and you don't have so much of that with goalkeepers, or you at least in sort of like mid to top tier goalkeepers. I think at the bottom end or the U23s, there's always that danger that there's a bit of rotation or new manager comes in or a new signing. But with the sort of like the older goalkeepers or the goalkeepers that have been number ones for a couple of seasons, those ones are like, they're a lot easier to pick and not have to worry about those DMPs. And I think a DMP in the cap mode is almost like game over, isn't it? Like, if you know, depending on how heavy you're expecting your cards to hit, but unless you've got a player coming back from injury who's got like an L15 of 0 and you know they're going to bang like 40 plus, one DMP in a lineup that doesn't have that kind of like swing can just cause misery for the game week. And I think that's been my problem. I've definitely had a few DMPs in my cap modes in recent weekends, and this week I'm trying to avoid that. You were saying off air as well, actually, that your situation for your super rare team has changed this weekend. What are you doing this weekend for that?
It kind of ties back into this whole prize pool stuff again, because I don't have any Celtic cards playing this week again in our cup game for us. But like the top, so like I'm always excited about winning star cards. That's obviously what we always talk about here in particular. And you know, the super rare division, the one I've been playing my Celtic cards in, used to have up until the tier change access to star level super rares. Now it doesn't, with the new tier change. So maybe that's just like cold reality that you were never going to get an Mbappe super rare or a Haaland super rare out of that division because of the rankings of the prize pools previously or whatever. So maybe it's just the kind of reality of it, which is fine, whatever, right? So I'm now kind of looking at all of the All-Star Super Rare and all the All-Star divisions, no matter what scarcity you're playing. Obviously, they've got those money prize pot places on them. But I think with these adjusted tiers, when you see that, and I say a lot of people, I think are, I say a lot of people, you know, I'm just getting this sentiment from my phone whenever I'm plugged into it. Yeah. But like tier 4, 3, and 2 sound really rubbish, but they're all actually a little bit better than what you maybe think they are. Like winning a tier 2 is an old tier 1, and a tier 1 is brilliant, you know. And a tier 3 you would normally be really gutted with, but generally a tier 2 is a great quality a card to win for what in your mind's eye is a tier 3, you know. So I think this week with that kind of new tier thing been out there's been less stars visibly like available in some places. I think there might be some movement on, like, because All-Star Rare, for example, is down to 5. I think what was that last week? Was it maybe 15 or 20 or something? What was Rare Pro? We did a poll on it last week. Rare Pro is at 7. The Rare Pro was at like 17 or something like that, I think. 20 maybe even. It was, yeah. Tier 1s go back to 20. So yeah, that's a big difference for sure. Total prize pot stays the same, 155 cards. But anyway, I think that visible difference of the tier categories across the prize pool will maybe have a lot of people kind of doing some different things from last week or whatever. And I'm not getting any uniques that are playing, so I'm just trying to go quite hard at like the cap mode. And then I'm going to go into a region with one of my super rare teams rather than All-Star because I've not got the unique set. And I don't think, like, because the money's there as well, I think, like I seen before, that top 10 will have a real strong competition. You know, there'll be uniques in all those teams probably. So it's just trying to pick my battles. And I feel that I'm getting quite good at maybe sensing that because of all the content I do on the channel with like the members and stuff like that, looking at guys that have limited galleries and building limited teams. And when you actually zoom into, like, I'll open one up the now, so I've got it on screen, right? But like Cap 270, it's got that lovely dual payout of rares and limiteds as well. But the star count just goes back to top 12 now. And for a limited division, imagining getting into top 12 is really pie in the sky. You know, you would need to have mad XP on all these cards because this is an XP division. You know, you need your team to kill somebody 8-0. You need to nail the captain. You know, you need everything to go your way to even, if you were to even think about, oh yeah, I should definitely be getting top 10 this week, regardless of whatever else is out there, you know. Whereas me, and I think a lot of people are probably much more comfortable aiming for like top 500, top 200, getting that kind of range of outcomes available to you. So I think this week in particular is probably the best week to, it's what I always talk about with my own club, and it's one thing I'd say for anyone out there chasing any end product this weekend, Stish, is make sure you've got one team that you could put your mortgage on, to pardon the expression, you know, but like one team that you're like that. I know they're going to start. I know their fixture's great. I don't care that one's in Korea and one's in Italy and one's under 23 and one's this and one's that. You know, just the team that all the 5 guys, you've got no question marks over them. Get the best, get them together and just find the one place you can make sure you can put them in and build backwards from there. Because, you know, getting into those absolute top star places now, like you say, we've got that assurances of like, if you get in star, you know, it's a smaller pool for you to be fishing in, and it's just all the best names that are in that. And there's nothing worse than obviously looking back and having a look at what you could have won. And I'm looking forward to catching Laird's show, which is on a Friday as well, where he does that to himself.
Rabbit chasing.
Which is always good torture, going through that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's probably, so for me, that basically culminated in me putting out a champion super rare team full of super rares. I've got no unique in it. But I looked at the scores last week and it wasn't really, the scores didn't put me off, right? And I recommend everyone do this for whatever division they're looking at. But when you go into Sorare data and at the SO5 Game Week Center and look at rankings, you can go back in the past. And with the features that they've got on their site, you can not only see the scores, but you can also see the players at an easy glance of who they had. You can hover over it. It'll tell you what team they play for, what their name is, their multiplier, whatever. And when I was doing that in some of these divisions, even in the cap modes and All-Star, there was a lot of random players, and I say that kind of loosely, that were populating the bigger teams. It wasn't all like, you know, Kimmich's and Messi's and all that kind of stuff. You know, there was always like a goalkeeper from Turkey, and this guy's got a centre back from Belgium, and this guy's got a midfielder from Portugal. These players are always influencing the leaderboard, you know, even though we all think that, you know, there's only a couple of key fixtures. Football doesn't really work like that, you know, like when it's 11v11, there will be a game that pops out of nowhere And that guy you had a wee hunch about, he did get the start. He was on penalties. He did take one. And you're like, bugger, I wish I'd put him in some team, or whatever. So I think it's going to be one of those weekends ahead for everyone. And I would strongly urge, get a master team built. That's probably the best way of putting it. A master team,
I like that. And then, my strongest lineup at the moment tends to go into U23 Rare Pro. It keeps changing from time to time. Sometimes it goes into D2. And you made an interesting point there about, not having those star super rares in that U23 D2, which may now take out some of those top end super rares from that division and into D1. And I think like when you made that point, it kind of struck in my head that some of the chat online, particularly with some of the big accounts on Twitter and stuff, in recent weeks has been about maybe Sorare's lack of thinking about the whales and the importance of bringing them into the game. And I wonder if that has been a conscious decision based on trying to get people into that D1 a bit more, that play D2, like start looking at uniques, maybe push onto that, because that is now where you're going to have to go to win those star super rares, which, was the case before. But now, we had a little taster for a couple of months.
Little kid on taster.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm one of those people, I guess, that I'm probably in that pool of players that they're trying to tempt up to the D1. It's like, you've got a lot of super rares. I've got 3 uniques. They might not all hit at the same sort of time of the season. But if I did pick up a goalkeeper and a forwards in any given week, I could enter a D1 with that 5. At the moment, I'm not quite as tempted, because I think unless you've got maybe 10 to 15 uniques like that you can rotate in and out and leave a few in and leave a few out, etc. I think my uniques are better used as like the booster in D2 because of the kind of players they are as well. They're not, they're not going to compete with like a PSG stack or something like that in D1, or I might be one of them players that if I did go up, I might be looking at cap 220 or something like that in unique. And I'm not sure how useful that actually is. I've never really looked at it, but I do wonder if
all these things scale as well, So I think about it again, like if it was limited, if it was like limiteds go to rares or rares go to super rares, like it's kind of the same thing over and over again. But as you know, like it's just much bigger. The scales, as it were, just get much bigger on top of that. So. It's something. It's definitely tricky to look at, But I think they're quite. I'm sorry, mate. I was going to say something else about that, but I've kind of lost it now.
Well, I'll jump back in on it as well. But
sorry.
I have been looking at the unique market just to sort of see how much it would cost me to kind of fill those gaps. But I think at the minute, because of the 3 uniques I do have are all U23, it almost makes sense to me to pick them up as U23s as well. And obviously, starter U23 forwards are quite expensive unless you can sit on them for a few years before they kind of break into the team. But then the way that they mint uniques, they're not really minting players that like aren't going to be playing for the next couple of seasons. You know what I mean? So that's difficult. Same for goalkeepers. U23 goalkeeper uniques are obviously expensive. So I probably wouldn't be buying one of them. But it is tempting. Some of the prices of the uniques have started to come down, because I think the people who hold those uniques realize that they need, and people who play uniques, really, they do need more players to play it. They need liquidity in that market, because there's not a lot of buyers for those top end uniques, is there? Like, and if you've spent like mortgage money on uniques, like a lot of the whales have, it must get a bit scary when, like, times you fall on hard times, you need to get rid of 2 or 3 of them to like pay some bills or something. I don't know. And like how difficult that must be. I've listed my uniques a few times more, but like what I like to call like whale bait. Like I'll list my Levitt every now and then for like 10 ETH and see if someone just comes and one day like buys it for 10 ETH without thinking about it. But I've never listed any of them at a price that I expect to get many offers on. I think I've only ever had, and this is when it wasn't listed, I've had someone come in and try to take the Lehan bomb off of me. But I think, like they're a Saul fan, they want to pick up that rookie. And, but like the offer was at the time, I didn't feel it was a good offer. Looking back at it now, it wasn't a bad offer, but I think that's just because the market shifted. Do you know what I mean? And now I think that the prices that people can potentially pick some of these uniques up for are starting to look a little bit more sensible. And I think a lot of that is because people are pricing cards based on their ability to pick up these thresholds and cash prizes now. I don't know about you, but I feel like there's a lot of noise on Twitter, like from people moaning about the thresholds that you can win in super rare and unique. And it's like people saying that the unique threshold should be $2,500 or something like that, because this like 5-player lineup is going to cost you like 20k to put together. And
I could see a world where they do all that stuff eventually. I think this is just like the first rollout of it all the way.
I would agree. Really. And I think at the moment, if they did that, it could cause like a stampede almost. And they could end up losing money quite quickly if a lot of players did level up to unique level and it didn't balance out with the rest of the sort of pools. Quite interesting thinking about it, but that's probably like a whole other discussion to have. That's almost an hour on its own, like trying to figure out. I'm not a mathematician. I don't really know, but following some of the accounts on Twitter that post up the kind of stats and that, it looks like, at the moment, I think it was like M-Pen posted something that like they are about 28% of the revenue is going out in thresholds and cash prizes at the moment. And a few weeks back, it was at like 24%. So people are getting better already at cap modes. They're paying out more money, but they're not making more money on auctions because they've slowed the auctions down. It's like whoever's job that it is to figure all this out. I would not want that job personally, but yeah.
The first thing I thought of there when you said that is like the difference in revenue percentage changes for one of two reasons: either they're paying more out or revenues went down.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So it's not necessarily maybe that they're paying out more, but maybe like revenues down 4% or something.
This is it, and I think something like that can be purely down to what uniques did they auction that week, or like how many star players were in the sort of super rare auctions that week, and that can bring it down. But
I've not seen that one, but it was just those two. Maybe one of those, maybe both of those things, maybe a wee bit of both. A wee bit of.
They've definitely slowed auctions down. I don't know if you've noticed.
Auctions have slowed down.
They've slowed them down. Like the rate of auctions has come down, and that obviously, if that's come down by more than 4%, but they've only like given away more than 4% of revenue, then maybe it doesn't look so bad on paper. I don't know, but there's a little bit of question in the chat. Actually, we'll come into that now.
Sure.
I said, Bazar says, would you recommend buying a U23 keeper to play limited, or just leave it, as they are hard to come by for someone who actually plays? I think Bazar and Ian Sorare just jumped in and said the same thing. Unless you're targeting U23, I wouldn't bother paying the premium. And I don't know about you, Quinny, but I would agree with that. There's a lot of better cheap options if you don't. I think U23 keepers have that risk of rotation unless they've been the goalkeeper for a couple of seasons. And yeah, if you're not targeting U23, you can get a nailed on goalkeeper who's probably going to be good for the next 2 or 3 years for like a quarter of the price in most cases. I don't know about you. What do you reckon, Quinny?
I think it's one of those ones where it depends who you're talking about. Because see, with goalkeepers, for me, again, like it really comes down to who you're talking about. Because a guy that I'm looking at now, Van der Voort, is £124, 0.1 Ethereum for unlimited at the moment, which is pretty decent, I think, for Van der Voort. Costa at Porto is double the price of Van der Voort at the moment. So I was wondering if they were both that price, but no, Van der Voort's a wee bit cheaper. But anyway, like if you're looking at a goalkeeper that's around that price anyway, I wouldn't let the fact that Van der Voort has a U23 premium put you off, because if you are expecting him to get better, then that U23 premium will come back to serve you later on. That's true. So within reason, I wouldn't exclude them because of it, but it has to make sense. I wouldn't, if you're looking at a guy that's 50 quid, then the 50 quid under 23 goalkeeper is probably quite shaky. Probably isn't that nailed, probably isn't that good, So then in that case, yeah, the premium's not worth it or whatever. But yeah, so it really depends what budget you're in, what quality of guy you're after anyway, and then who you fancy. Because maybe you're building a Belgian team and Van der Voort makes most sense, or maybe you're building a challenger team, or whatever it is. So that's kind of how I stand on it. For goalkeepers, it's all about the guy. That's my goalkeeper acquisition's been for the last 2 years. It's has to be a guy I like, nailed on, good goalkeeper. Seen
One
him
thing,
play.
one thing I will say from a trading perspective, not necessarily an SO5 though, is like picking up those U23 goalkeepers who are like on the bench now and have like a good number one in front of them who's likely to move on. That can be a good strategy if you've got patience and you don't need them this week. Like I've definitely picked up. I've got a lot of super rare and rare goalkeepers who are like young kids who, you know, they just maybe just need a loan or just need the number one to like get picked up by a bigger club and they're in. And it's like you can pick some of those goalkeepers up now for like less than £100 in a rare, and they're probably only a season or two off of getting a move or getting a loan or potentially their number one goalkeeper being moved on. It's international utility as well in those kind of like, we've got the international break coming up. I know Sorare announced, well, I think we were all expecting it anyway, that the Euro qualifiers were going to be covered. I'm sure it won't be the case for every game because obviously they won't have coverage at certain countries, grounds and stuff like that. But that is another good point as well, is like you could probably, I was looking at this already like a 2 months ago actually, and I started trying to pick them up, but I didn't get the goalkeeper in that I wanted to get in. And when they did the announcement this week, I looked at that goalkeeper's price and he's doubled. I'm like, but I was looking at is it Bailey Peacock Farrell or something like that? Who's at he's number 2 at Burnley. He's like the Northern Ireland goalkeeper usually, and they have got to play San Marino in the qualifiers in a couple of weeks. So I was looking at that weeks ago, thinking I'll pick him up, 100 odd quid, and just sit on that, and hopefully it will yield something during that Euro break. I've got Muric, who will start for Kosovo, but they've got a slightly less. They haven't got a great fixture, but I think that Northern Ireland fixture will give some utility to anyone who's got Peacock Farrell. And yeah, I think I picked up like a Craig Cathcart for the same reason. I thought I could do a little defensive stat. Yeah, but I didn't pick up Peacock Farrell, and now he's almost like double the price. So I kind of missed my opportunity there because of that announcement. I just kind of sat on my hands a little bit too long, I think. But yeah, there's so many different ways to play the goalkeeper game. I think patience can pay off massively. But yeah, in terms of like, if you need a player now, that U23 premium may or may not pay off for you. But also I think that if you look at some of the goalkeepers that are aging out this season, around about this time now is where they kind of start to hit their kind of the price that they'll just be now. So like if you look at Muric and you look at Safanov and you look at Kook, goalkeepers like that who are quite nailed on at their clubs, but lose their U23 this summer, it's like the price that they're at now is probably where they're going to be. So they might look like bargains because, oh, that player's taken a massive dip in price, but that dip is purely the U23 dip, and
I think that'll happen, but all the way through this month, I don't think that will kind of slow down. Because I think some people will think, oh, I can get short-term utility out of that. I'll take it now. There'll still be a wee bump on it while you can use them, I think. So I guess that'll still come down, some of them. If
you've got some really good U23 outfield players, sometimes that's worth doing just for the payoff. Totally. Like you might, one star pool win in U23 can be absolutely enormous. My friend won a Haaland like 2 weeks ago. He's been playing U23 for a couple of years as well, but that one win is massive for his gallery. It's not quite as big as it was a few weeks ago, but it's still a Haaland. You know what I mean? And he's kind of like deliberating whether you move that on. Obviously, like he's got some good cards. He's got like the Musiala super rare, so it's like it makes sense for him to have a player of that caliber. But maybe Haaland's not. I don't know. But me and my friend both the same. We kind of like with the forwards particularly. It's all about the AA. And then Haaland's obviously going to get loads of goals, but he's not the kind of player that like does a lot else in the game. He's not on and off the ball constantly. He's not. He put his runs make the game for City. It's not all about what he's doing on the ball. It's what he's doing off it, and then where he puts himself in the box or around the box to get a goal. So yeah, he's been weighing that up. And I think that right now, the price that someone like Haaland's at, you'd probably be better off selling. I'd rather have a Musiala or a Wirtz forward card than a Haaland. What do you reckon? That's my point, because you can pick one of those up for around about the same price, and I think that they're a better card personally.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you on the face of it. For your team, who you'd want to pick every week, you would definitely be better off with Musiala or Wirtz for sure. I think versus Haaland, but Haaland, I say it's just that reliability is what you get out of him as well. Because Wirtz now they're playing midweeks, they're rotated. Musiala, that's a busy squad, and I know Pep Roulette's always on, and Haaland won't play 100% of matches, whatever. But like it feels like that's a bit more of a known element, or a bit more of a controlled situation in that respect.
I think,
so it's kind of a tough one. And as I say, if you already have a Musiala there to complement him, like your pal does, then you've got two powers there,
That's why I was saying to him, maybe he should look at the Wirtz forward, because the only thing with Wirtz is he's got a bad move in him. The difference between Musiala and Haaland is if he goes to Real Madrid, he might not play every game. Do you know what I mean? You almost want, if you knew Wirtz was going to stay at Leverkusen for another 2 seasons, you'd break someone's arm off for it. And I think that's priceless.
Agreed.
I think if Wirtz was at Real Madrid, or if he was at Bayern now and he was playing like he is, his price would be higher than most cards on the platform. But he's still got that dodgy move in him where he could become a bit of a rotation player for a year or two. He is amazing, but if you put him in a Real Madrid team or a Barcelona or something, he's not going to play every game. And then, his price is going to drop by a third or something like that. That's the risk of Wirtz, I think. Not so much.
I've never thought about Wirtz going to Real Madrid before. That's some thought.
I think it can happen, man. Well.
Oh, it'd be brilliant. Wirtz, Valverde, Camavinga, Tchouameni.
Yeah,
that would be destruction, man. And they want Bellingham. How would you get? Oh man, what a team that would be.
This is it. I mean, Bellingham's an interesting one as well, because if he moves from Dortmund, Bellingham's a difficult one, isn't he? Because he's so good. You think, how could he be rotated anywhere? But you think that about Wirtz as well. But if you go to a Real Madrid or a Barcelona, there's always that risk of rotation. Same with Bayern. I think I think he gets in the Bayern side, but Wirtz will have more competition at Bayern. I don't think he would start every game nailed.
I don't think he wants to go to Bayern. I think that's been kind of squashed already, that he's not going to do Bayern by the club and by him. I think that's why I think anyway. I'm just surprised. I just don't see Wirtz having a bad move, because I know he's got some set pieces now, but he's not always had sets at Leverkusen. He's always been behind like a Demerbe or an Aranguiz or a Bailey, or there's been a few guys that are taking stuff ahead of him. So I know he's on them now, but I don't know, man. I don't think he's got a bad move in him at all. I think he's incredible.
He's an amazing. He's one of my favourite players at the minute, and I mean he has been for a while. He was one of the first cards I bought when I came onto Sorare, because I'd seen bits of him, and my kind of before I really knew how SO5 worked, I was just thinking about the kids that I knew were going to be good in a few years. So I picked Musiala and Wirtz up, and I had Bailey, who at the time was absolutely on fire at Bayern, but he's he got a bad move. He's not been. I've still got my Bailey. I'd love him to get. I'd love him to get a move away from Villa to somewhere maybe out of the Prem. And that might happen. He's kind of been hot and cold there. Someone in the chat, McGettigan, says, "Does Cherky have a bad move?" And I would say absolutely. I think he's got a bad move. This talk of him going to PSG would be really bad for him short term. But I think as soon as Neymar or Messi leaves, he would be fine. I don't know about you, but if one of those two leaves and they pick Cherky, I think he'd be fine. And then that would actually turn out to be a good move for him. But I think short term, if they picked him up in the January window, as was touted by a lot of people, that would have been a bad move for him, maybe for another season. But he's still 19. People forget that. He's 19 years old. And the same with Wirtz and Musiala and all these players is we do forget how young they are because they're playing at the level they are at this age. But Cherky, I would love Cherky as a Cherky holder to stay at Lyon for another season or two. And then
he really does need to stay there for another 3 or 4 to be real about it. You know what I mean? If he wants to, because I'm just thinking about it, where does Cherky go, right? If it's not PSG, I don't know if Real Madrid or Barcelona take him. So then any team in Spain that takes him is sub-optimal, let's say, for real life and SO5. He doesn't want to move to Valencia or Villarreal or something.
Madrid or something, wouldn't be.
So then Italy, maybe there's a place for him in Milan somewhere. Don't see him at Juventus. Wouldn't see him in Rome or anywhere else in Italy. So it'd probably be Milan only. But then both those Milan teams, I don't really like Inter Milan too much, but I don't mind some of their players, and AC Milan are decent enough. But there's always problems with their squads and quality of manager and all sorts of stuff going on with those two clubs. So how good is that? Wouldn't see him in Germany, and then I couldn't see him going to Challenger Europe really, unless it was like in a mega blockbuster deal to Ajax or Benfica or something like that. It would need to be a big blockbuster move. Like 30 million they would need to spend. And really make him a big deal, and we'll play you Champions League and all that caper.
Yeah, I agree in that. Like, that big move shouldn't really be for another 3 years, like you said. Maybe if he can stay at Lyon for at least another 2 seasons. But yeah, I think PSG is the most likely move for him. And you don't really want that to happen just yet. As a holder, I wouldn't like to have to sit on that card for like a year waiting for like Messi to go back to Barca or do something else with his life. Because I think
he's got in his what I think he's got in his favour going for him, but is see that Lyon squad, they're all like academy pals. Yeah. And see if they do stick at it together for a couple of seasons and try and get Lyon back into the Champions League groups, beating some teams and stuff like that. And then if you're the main guy doing that, I think that's probably his best play. And I hope that's the way he thinks as well, because going to PSG and being rotation bait or any of these other moves we've just kind of fleshed out, like, it's just rolling the dice. And this kid's been desperate to play for years, it feels like,
Yeah. I mean, he's the classic. If you look at what happened to Odegaard when he moved to Real Madrid, when he was like that hotly tipped next big kid, wonder kid on the scene, got the move to Real Madrid at 16 was he when he went there? But people because he was so young and he was so hotly tipped, everyone was like, had very high expectations for him, and it never really worked out for him. And I feel like Cherky's obviously a bit older than that now, but I feel like he would have a similar situation if he moved to like a Madrid now, and he's 19. Probably. It's like, he'd be waiting 2 or 3 years. He'd get a loan here and there. He'd just be moved around quite a lot. And I don't think, he's been waiting for this for what feels like, since I've been playing Sorare, I've heard people talking about this kid. And I always was like, I was quite a big doubter of his, because I was just like, this kid's overpriced on the platform for years. And it wasn't until like December that I started looking at him, because he started getting the minutes. And I'm like, this could be it. We finally might actually get to see a run of games for this guy. Puts in a couple of really good performances. Manager seems to like him. He looks a bit more settled in his position. They're playing him in a bit more centrally a lot of the time. And yeah, they're giving him freedom, which is another thing as well. Like, he is one of those players that is allowed to make mistakes and take risks, and they don't just like haul him off. Like, for all the good things you see him do on the pitch, he will make the odd really bad pass, but he'll make 4 or 5 fantastic through balls, key passes, attempted assists in a game. But for all like 5 of them, there'll be 2 like absolute howlers that you'll be like a back heel that just goes to the centre back, and it's like, why is he doing that? But they're allowing him to do this because creative attacking midfielders need to be given the freedom to do that and try that, I think. And like I said, for every 5 that go right, a couple go wrong. And if you think about it, 5 big chances created for a player like Lacazette is massive for Lyon as well. Right? Yeah. And I think that's why he's allowed to do what he is. And I don't know if he'd be allowed that freedom at like a massive, like Champions League winning or contending side, that he would not. They couldn't put him in the Man City team and let him play like that. I don't think he would be, he'd be ridiculed by the English press. That kind of player, you think about Ronaldo when he turned up at Man United and he was all flicks and tricks. And that first season, he was almost like laughed at as like a joke player. And Anthony's seeing it now, like at United. Yeah. Every flick and trick he does is like, this guy's a clown, blah, blah, blah. And I think Cherky would come under that kind of scrutiny if he moved to the Prem. But in France, they let him do it. And I think he'll be a better player for that, because he'll start to find that kind of he'll start to crack his own kind of secret code, figure out what passes he should and shouldn't be trying in certain positions on the pitch. And he will become a better player for it. And hopefully he, like Wirtz is like, similar in kind of his scoring and his creative output, but he's not all flicks and tricks. He's a bit more rugged, and he's just like, his positioning and his passing and his vision is like, but like they're quite similar players in terms of their output, but they just have very different styles. And I think those kind of works players are accepted a little bit more by, especially like the English, British, like football media, football press. They will put up with averts a lot more than they will someone like Cherki, and then like that rubs off on the fans as well, I think. Don't know what you reckon about that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think as well, but with the Prem, if you look at the kind of the learning curve, as it were, for like Jadon Sancho, who was amazing at Dortmund. Dortmund would be a great move for Cherki, by the way. I ruled out the Bundesliga, but Dortmund is probably a great spot he could go to, if any, in that league. Maybe Gladbach, I don't know. But so yeah, I think if he went to the Prem, it would be an absolute nightmare from start to finish. He'd probably get injured like mad. It's a huge physical uplift as well as quality, and we've already seen that he's been tested about injuries, and I don't think that'll be lost on him, really. I think Lacazette's in that squad again. Toliso's back in that squad, back from Bayern Munich. They've got Laurent Blanc as manager. I don't think, I hope that they're kind of cultivating a little Leon kind of resurgence with like we've seen Kakare, we've seen all these academy kids come into the team already with some of these veterans I've just mentioned that are Leon guys, born and bred, as it were, so yeah, I hope that he stays for at least 3 seasons at this point,
I hope so. I like him as a player, and I hope he's allowed the kind of freedom to carry on doing what he's doing, because he's great to watch. He's just a little bit inconsistent, but I think that's Leon on the whole. Like, if you've watched much of them, they can be really hit and miss. They're either like fantastic to watch or like painful. And like talking about this upcoming game week, I looked at Cherki as like, he's one of my key players in my like collection, if you like, but he is very much fixture reliant. And I think this weekend they play away to Lille, and I just don't fancy Lyon in that game. Obviously got to watch Lille against PSG a few weeks ago, and they were really good. And Lyon away from home against them, I just don't fancy Cherki this weekend. I've got him in a half decent lineup, but I think I've got better options in U23 as a forward this weekend. And this might surprise you, but I think my best option in U23 forwards wise this weekend plays for Eupen, Conan and Dri. I've got him in my main lineup this weekend, my super rare of him, and he was like a bargain buy. I think I've got a rare and a super rare of him, and I think I've put both of them in like pretty strong lineups. He's one of them players that like so rare data, have you used that? Like they've got like the kind of predicted score, like opposition score. If you hover over that now on the desktop, you can see what the very specific. So like if it's a forward card, you hover over it because it'll be like 65 for a forward, and you think, oh, that's good. But then you hover over it and it's like right forwards normally score this, centre forwards score this, left forwards score that. And Conan and Dri, I looked at a couple of weeks ago, and a couple of my friends, we all bought him. He was like a group purchase. Like we all got him in our teams pre-season because he was so cheap. And one of my mates like done a scouting on him and was like, this kid's going to be amazing, trust me. And we all bought him really cheap. And the other week in the group chat was like, I looked at his Sorare data and then it hovered over, and it was like, as a right forward, they would normally score like a 70. And Conan Endry is in decent form, and he plays as like a right-sided forward. So I was like, I looked at that and I thought, well, if right-sided forwards normally get a good run of the play against this team, he is like an above-average right-sided forward in that league. I'll bet money that he's going to have a good game. And he got, I think, a goal and an assist in that game. And so since then, this is the next. I think they've got Oostend at home, which is a really good fixture as well. And yeah, slight hover over that, and like right forward looked dark green, and I'm like, he's going in again. Like, let's see if like they can hit twice. But that's been a really nice addition to the Sorare data like team lineup builder for me, and it's helped me pick this weekend Conan Endry ahead of like a Cherki super rare. So like, hopefully it pays off for me. It's a bold move, but I'll definitely be keeping an eye on that fixture the weekend.
Me too. Hope that comes in for you.
Yeah, they're the ones that like, when they come good, those sort of calls, you start to feel like Eric Ten Hag or something like in your weekend. Like you get a little bit of, start puffing your chest out around a town centre and that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. and hopefully I called it right. I don't know, but I'm going to be keeping an eye on that fixture, and I will be keeping an eye on Lyon as well. But I think Cherky's not in like one of my like powerhouse lineups this weekend. He's in. I think I might have put him in a cap mode or something like that. But he's still in a lineup I want him to do well in. But he's not in like my main focus at the moment. What
more of a team effort.
Yeah, what given there's no Celtic this weekend, what fixtures are you mostly going to be keeping an eye on?
Oh, good question. I'm looking forward to watching Atletico Madrid on Monday night. The Memphis Depay Griezmann party should be back on. I've got my OG Memphis back in my club as well, so I'm pretty hyped for that, which is cool. So he's back in the team with the captain's armband on for FC Barcelona, my club. So I'll be watching that Monday night. I don't think I'll be able to catch much on Sunday. I maybe be able to catch some bits and bobs on Saturday, but I've not went as far ahead as to look and see exactly what's on at what times yet. I'm just having a wee look through my gallery. I say there's nothing really that jumps out at me as a mad blockbuster game that I need to go and catch. But what about you?
I think I'll be keeping an eye on Ajax and Heerenveen. I've got quite a few players in that team, but I think mostly because I think that Kenneth Taylor, who is like one of quite an important card for me, I've got his rare and his super. And he is getting a lot of flack from Ajax fans at the moment. There's a lot of fans online, a lot of noise for him to become taken out of the team. And he was benched for the last league game. He came on, he did okay. But I'll be keeping a pretty keen eye on that to see if he does or doesn't start. I haven't put him in any of my lineups this weekend because I'm not confident enough that he'll start anymore, or at least for now. I think he may be benched this weekend. So a bit of a weird one, but I think I'll be keeping an eye on that because even though like he's probably not going to be playing, literally for that reason, I'm going to be keeping an eye on that game. Other than that, I'm going to have a quick look at who I've lined up, actually, just remind myself what my teams look like. So I think I've got Florian Wirtz as captain again, and I think that's a little bit risky because of the midweek, and like I've noticed that he has been benched a couple of times after the midweek games of late. But you know, he does have that ability to come on and do something, you know, still. So I've been doing this thing of late where like if I put a player like that in an important lineup, I also captain them, because it's like if he doesn't play, the team's done. If he does play, then he's going to be a massive hit. So it's like, if you're going to risk him enough to put him in the lineup, you may as well captain him as well, because he's that good that if he starts, you'll absolute fly. But if he doesn't, the team's dead anyway. So sometimes I've been putting the captain's band on like a really risky player, and I've got him in my U23 rare. My rare pro has got Musiala captain. Be keeping an eye on that fixture, definitely. I think Veerman has a very good fixture this weekend. They have got to play Cambuur. So I'm hoping for a big score from Veerman. I've got high hopes for my U23 Rare Pro this week. So another thing I will keep an eye on, as I have been, and we talked about this, was obviously we had all of the career problems the previous weekend. This weekend wasn't as bad. There was a lot of weird timings of the updates. So like we got like a half kind of update on Daegu, and like the goalkeeper had a clean sheet when it weren't a clean sheet and stuff like that. So like for a couple of days, it was like, what is going on at Opta? Like, how have we got like 20 minutes of AA and not the rest of the game? Like, it updated it for a bit, and then like players who'd conceded 3 goals in another game had a clean sheet, and it was like, what is going on? But by the end of the game week, it had all actually sorted itself out, and I managed to win a 7th place in Asia with my Koreans last weekend. But my prize was a little bit underwhelming because obviously the prize pool is like not where it needs to be in Asia at the moment. So I've moved that same lineup into All-Star Rare Pro. So that'll be interesting to see how those scores come in. Cecilia captain. I've got like Ulsan and Daegu, Ulsan and Seoul play each other. So I do have a little bit of, I've got an Ulsan defensive stack, but I also have Osmar in there. So it's like, but that's not too bad, because if they have like a defensively battled game, Osmar doesn't have a defender card, so the clean sheet isn't like massively important. So long as they don't get absolutely hammered, he should be okay. So yeah. I thought I'd put it in Rare Pro and just see if, you know, they scored 400 last weekend. If I can get anywhere near that again, then I might find myself in the cards and hopefully win something that's a bit more useful than another Korean card at the moment. So yeah, that's going to be of interest to me this week as well. I think the Asia Korean fixtures, but they always are, to be honest. I quite enjoy watching the Korean football in the morning, so I'll be doing that as I do most weekends, to be honest.
Right, sounds good. Just having a big look across. Yeah, I'll probably be really looking forward to watching New York this week. They're at home to Miami. Santi Rodriguez is back in the building. Yet to get a win out of my New York Cards this season, so I'm looking at them very closely. Hopefully they do something. That's probably the main one I'll probably watch in terms of what night's that on Sunday. I don't know, sorry, it's Seattle. I know it is Sunday for them as well. At midnight, yes, I'll probably be able to catch that UK time. And I'm just having a wee look around again. I'm just double checking, because one thing I'm thinking about, Stishy, as you're talking there as well, is with Wirtz and Co, we have midweeks again next midweek. So I've just dropped. So I was looking there at Play Sharper, for example. Robertson's on his 70% to play against Bournemouth or whoever they've got, but they do have their second leg against Real Madrid next midweek. So I'm probably just going to play the air of caution on that and just drop Robertson, because I just don't want the random rotation to come and get me.
I get that.
So I know that it's a what are Liverpool down 5-2 on aggregate, but they did just beat Man U 7-0. So like, it's not as if they're going to be writing this off now in terms of body, mind, and spirit when they show up in the stadium. So I wouldn't rule out that they play Simicast against Bournemouth, for example. So I think there'll be a lot of that going on this game week that you'll be able to forecast, and maybe you won't. Maybe some people will take the chance. Sometimes it'll backfire. Man City are playing Leipzig, so I was looking at those teams as well. Inter will play Porto midweek. And then we've got the full Europa and Conference League. So everyone who just played Thursday plays again this Thursday. So Wirtz is 2-0 up in the first game. They're going to be away in Hungary for game 2. So I think Wirtz will start this game at the weekend.
Good shout.
Play 70-80, and then probably doesn't start away in Hungary, and then is on the bench if they need them.
That makes sense. I like that. I'll take that as well. I think, I think the midweek's a little bit like a no-show for me at the minute. So like, I'd rather like get use of my verts on the weekend and like not worry too much about what's going on next midweek. So I'll take that 100%.
That's the way I'd read it.
Yeah. Well, I think looking at the time, I've got to fly off to Antwerp this morning, so I've got to get myself a bit gutted they didn't have a fixture, because that would have been fantastic to get to a game while I was out there, because I don't think my flight back is until like 6. But you know, it's a lot of trains and that once I get to Belgium, but it's going to take me a couple of hours to get to Heathrow Airport from where I live in South London. So we're going to have to cut this one, keep it short and sweet. We're in a like just around the hour mark, which is good, but I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. I don't think we've forgotten to talk about anything. So I'll love you and leave you until next Thursday or Friday or Wednesday, whenever we end up doing it, Quinny.
It was a wee bit of au naturel from us today. No plan or prep, just roll with the punches, you know. So I really enjoyed it. Stish, travel safe, mate. I hope you have a great time when you're over there.
Will do.
Good luck to everyone this weekend.
Good luck, everyone. Take care.